Hello, Mr. Montalvo here, and today our topic is espionage and sedition during World War I. Our objective for today is to examine the restrictions placed on citizens after the United States' entry into World War I, restrictions on their rights, including the Espionage Act of 1917 and the Sedition Act of 1918. Now, three important terms to understand this topic better are listed below. Now, a pacifist is a person who refuses to fight in any war because they believe that war is evil. Espionage is the practice of spying or using spies to obtain political and military information. And sedition is conduct, acting out, or speech, inciting people to rebel, encouraging people to rebel against the authority of the state, and the state being the nation or the country. Now, Russia withdrew from the war because a group known as the Bolsheviks seized power, overthrowing the Tsar, the Emperor of Russia, and his family. Under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, the Bolsheviks wanted to bring the communist revolution to Russia. Lenin, pictured here on the right. Lenin embraced the ideas of Karl Marx, a German thinker of the 1800s. Marx had predicted that the workers of the world would unite to overthrow the ruling class. This is Karl Marx here on the left. The workers would then divide property, private property, and set up a classless society, what he considered a truly equal society, what he would name a utopia, a perfect society. In March 1918, Russia and Germany signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk that ended Russia's participation in World War I. Among Americans who opposed the war was Jane Addams. If her name sounds familiar, it should. When we discuss the development of big business and the effects and the progressive era, we discuss Jane Addams, her work with the Hull House, and her work to bring an end to child labor. Now, many of these critics were pacifists, with anti-war feelings arose particularly with socialist believers. Now, what is a socialist? Different from a communist. A socialist believes that the people as a whole, rather than private individuals, should own and share the profits from business, ultimately to use those profits for the benefit of the entire society rather than the profit of individuals. And unfortunately, socialists and communism are often confused with one another, but they are different. Now, the Espionage Act of 1917 and the Sedition Act of 1918 were used by the Wilson administration during World War I to silence critics. The Espionage Act of 1917 permitted exclusion of certain materials from the mail. The Sedition Act imposed similar harsh penalties to anyone found guilty of making false statements that interfered with the prosecution of the war, insulting or abusing the US government and its officials, or teaching or defending any of the acts listed above. Eugene Debs was a union leader who was a founding member of the Industrialist Workers of the World, one of the strongest labor unions at the time. If his name sounds familiar, it should, because when we discuss the development of big business and the role and development of unions in the United States, this is the same Eugene Debs who helped to organize the Pullman strike. Now, he was arrested and sentenced to prison for his opposition to the United States' involvement in World War I. He is also a presidential candidate for the Socialist Party. Debs appealed the decision, and eventually the case reached the United States Supreme Court, where the court upheld his conviction. Major portions of the Espionage Act still remain as part of United States law to the present day. Now, it's important to try to understand what is the significance of a law being upheld by the Supreme Court. What does that mean? Think of our discussions of the three branches of government and the role that the United States Supreme Court plays. Now, Charles Schneck of the Socialist Party opposed U.S. participation in World War I. He was arrested for violating the Espionage Act after 15,000 leaflets, urging the resistance to the draft were distributed. Very interestingly enough, on the front of the leaflet was the first section of the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which prohibits slavery or involuntary servitude. Now, this is important because here's the United States government enrolling individuals without any say into the war, involuntary servitude. Now, in the Supreme Court case, the court decided that free speech can be limited under certain circumstances if the words represented a clear and present danger. This has a phenomenal impact and is still discussed in cases impacting freedom of speech in the United States till this day. Now, linked to this video lesson is a close reading analysis of the Supreme Court case. So do give that a try, as it will help with understanding this concept and the ramifications that espionage and seditions had on American society. Now, before you go, try to explain the effects of the Communist Revolution on American society. Now that's it for today. Thank you so much. Take care.